The Battle of Fredericksburg was a colossal Union defeat with a very heavy loss of life, while the Confederates suffered relatively little. In October, after the Battle of Antietam, Abraham Lincoln relieved General George B. McClellan of command of the Army of the Potomac and put the reluctant General Burnside in command. Burnside quickly put up a plan for attacking Lee through Fredericksburg, and on November 15th, Burnside's army started to move. At this time, the Union Army was widely spread out in northern Virginia, but Burnside quickly concentrated them at Fredericksburg without Lee noticing, and put them in 3 grand divisions under General Joe Hooker, Edwin V. Sumner, and William B. Franklin. But unfortunately for Burnside, the pontoon boats which were necessary for his army to cross the Rappahannock River had not arrived. Due to this delay, Lee found out that Burnside was in Fredericksburg and began sending his troops in that direction. Even Jackson, who was in the northern Shenandoah Valley, made one of his forced marches so that he would arrive in time for the battle. When the pontoon boats finally began to arrive on November 25th, Lee had almost his entire army in place on the heights on the other side of the river. Burnside waited until December 11th to start construction of his pontoon bridges. The construction of 5 were started right away on the morning of the 11th, but due to Confederate sharpshooters in the town, the bridge's progress was halted and Burnside had a few Union regiments get ferried across the river on pontoon boats. When these regiments landed, they entered Fredericksburg and started one of the first suburban battles of the Civil War.
Ready. Hey. Fire. Okay.
The fighting moves from house to house through Fredericksburg until finally, near the end of the day, the Confederates pull out of town. The Unions complete the bridges and on the 12th ferry almost their entire army across the river. During the 12th, Burnside and General William B. Franklin made up battle plans that would send Franklin's entire Grand Division forward on Jackson's weak line. Burnside said he would write the plans up for the next day. In the early morning, Burnside sends out orders to his commanders, but the orders are very vague and are not what his subordinates expected. General Franklin on the left is to attack with just 2 divisions of less than 5,000 men under Generals George Meade and John Gibbon, when he could attack with his whole Grand Division of 60,000. Thus, at 8:30 a.m., Meade's division of about 5,000 regulars marches out towards the Confederate line with Gibbon's division in reserve. The lines move through the field and come under fire from a single Confederate cannon on their flank. The cannon is commanded by John Pelham, a young cavalry officer under General Stuart. The cannon successfully holds the Union line back for almost an hour. When Pelham falls back due to a lack of ammunition, the Union Army again advances and soon begins to come under fire from artillery and infantry, and many of the units are broken up. But a few units charge into a swamp that is unoccupied by Confederate troops. The Union men drive through the gap and force the Confederate units that are on either side back, thus opening a large hole within the Confederate line. By now, the rebels are in peril, but when Meade calls for reinforcements, Franklin is unable to send any due to Burnside's orders. Gibbon, who joins the fight, is soon forced to fall back as Confederate infantry shoves into the gap. Confederate lines drive the Unions back into the field where they counterattack. But now the Union artillery opens on the Confederate line and drives them back to their previous position. By 1 p.m., the fighting on this front effectively ends and the fighting shifts to Marye's Heights to the north. First, Sumner at 1 p.m. pushes his lines forward towards the stone wall. As the Union lines move, they come under fire from Confederate cannons and several tiers of infantry. The Union lines hold and return fire. But then, due to the heavy amount of fire, the Union troops fall back. Having suffered extremely heavy losses, Sumner's division is pulled out and Hooker's division is sent in. Hooker's men start streaming forward at a faster rate.
Ready? Aim. Fire.
The lines, after receiving their own measure of judgment, fall back, leaving thousands of Union bodies on the ground. By now, most Union units have been engaged, and most have been slaughtered, but Burnside considers attacking again, but thankfully, he is dissuaded by his subordinates. On the 14th and 15th of December, Burnside moves his men back across the Potomac River, effectively ending the Battle of Fredericksburg. Although in January, he attempts one last effort at Lee's army by marching his men a few miles up the Potomac River to cross and outflank the rebel army. But his plan squelches into the mud with his army, as rains turn the road into quagmires. With his wagons and cannons drowning in mud, Burnside calls off the plan, which is soon known as the Mud March. Lincoln, by this time, is tired of Burnside and relieves him of command, putting General Joseph Hooker in command of the army. Hooker quickly begins to rebuild the Army of the Potomac after its demoralizing defeat under Burnside. Battle of Fredericksburg. Dead, Union, 1,300. Confederate, 600. Wounded, captured, and missing, Union, 11,300. Confederate, 4,800. Total, Union, 12,600. Confederate, 5,400.